The Great War, as it was known, ended in 1918. Millions lay dead, victims of a brutal conflict. Europe, once a tapestry of empires, was in ruins. From the ashes of war, a new world order struggled to emerge, but the seeds of future conflict were already being sown. The war had left deep scars on the victors and the vanquished alike. Germany, blamed for the war, faced harsh penalties. The Austro-Hungarian and Ottoman empires, once vast and powerful, crumbled into smaller nations. A sense of disillusionment and resentment permeated the air. In 1919, the victors of World War I gathered in Versailles, France, to draft a peace treaty. The world watched with bated breath as leaders from the Allied powers convened to shape the future of Europe and, indeed, the world. The grand halls of the Palace of Versailles echoed with discussions, debates and decisions that would have far-reaching consequences. The Treaty of Versailles, as it came to be known, aimed to prevent future wars and punish Germany for its role in the conflict. The treaty was a complex document, filled with clauses and stipulations designed to ensure that Germany would never again rise to threaten the peace of Europe. It was a document born out of both hope and vengeance, a delicate balance of justice and retribution. However, the treaty's harsh terms sowed the seeds of resentment that would contribute to the outbreak of World War II. The German delegates, faced with the severe conditions imposed upon their nation, could hardly contain their dismay. Across Germany, the treaty was met with outrage and disbelief, as many felt it was an unjust punishment that would cripple their nation. Germany was forced to accept responsibility for the war and pay heavy reparations to the Allied powers. These reparations were not just financial, they were a symbol of Germany's guilt and a constant reminder of its defeat. The economic burden placed on Germany was immense, leading to widespread poverty and suffering among its people. Its military was severely restricted, and it was stripped of territories. The once proud German army was reduced to a fraction of its former strength, and key territories were taken away, further diminishing Germany's power and influence. This loss of military and territorial strength was a blow to the national pride and identity of the German people. These punitive measures humiliated Germany and crippled its economy, creating fertile ground for extremist ideologies to take root. The economic hardship and national humiliation fostered a sense of desperation and anger among the German populace. This environment of discontent and instability provided a perfect breeding ground for extremist groups who promised to restore Germany's former glory and avenge the perceived injustices of the Treaty of Versailles. The seeds of resentment planted by the treaty would eventually grow into the devastating conflict of World War II. The 1920s witnessed a brief period of economic recovery, but it proved to be fragile. In 1929, the United States stock market crashed, triggering a global economic crisis known as the Great Depression. The effects were devastating, with widespread unemployment, poverty, and social unrest. The economic crisis hit Germany particularly hard. Hyperinflation rendered the German currency almost worthless. Unemployment soared and people lost their savings. The desperation and despair of the Great Depression created an environment in which extremist movements promising radical solutions could flourish. In the midst of economic turmoil and political instability, totalitarian leaders rose to power in Germany, Italy, and the Soviet Union. Adolf Hitler, Benito Mussolini, and Joseph Stalin exploited the anxieties of their nations, promising order, strength, and national revival. Hitler's Nazi party in Germany preyed on nationalist sentiment and anti-Semitism. Mussolini's fascist regime in Italy glorified violence and state power. Stalin's communist dictatorship in the Soviet Union employed terror and propaganda to crush dissent and consolidate control. These totalitarian regimes posed a growing threat to international peace and stability. Section 5. A policy of appeasement, averting war or fueling the fire. Faced with the growing threat of Nazi Germany, Britain and France adopted a policy of appeasement. Hoping to avoid another devastating war, they made concessions to Hitler in the belief that it would satisfy his territorial ambitions and preserve peace. However, appeasement only emboldened Hitler, who interpreted it as a sign of weakness. In 1938, Germany annexed Austria without firing a shot. Later that year, Britain and France agreed to the Munich Agreement, which allowed Germany to annex the Sudetenland region of Czechoslovakia, further emboldening Hitler's expansionist ambitions. Section 6. The Spanish Civil War, a dress rehearsal for global conflict. The Spanish Civil War, which erupted in 1936, served as a tragic prelude to World War II. This conflict, which lasted until 1939, was not just a struggle for control of Spain, but a significant event that drew the attention and involvement of major world powers. It became a proxy war, with Germany and Italy supporting the fascist forces of General Francisco Franco, while the Soviet Union provided aid to the Republican government. This international involvement highlighted the ideological battle lines that were being drawn across Europe, with fascism and communism clashing head-on. The Spanish Civil War became a testing ground for new military technologies and tactics. Both sides experimented with strategies that would later be seen on the battlefields of World War II. The use of tanks, aircraft and modern artillery was refined, and the war saw the first widespread use of aerial bombardment against civilian targets. The Spanish Civil War witnessed horrific atrocities and the indiscriminate bombing of civilians, foreshadowing the horrors that would unfold on a larger scale during World War II. The bombing of Guernica by German and Italian planes became a symbol of the brutal new form of warfare that targeted not just soldiers but entire populations. It also demonstrated the growing polarization of Europe and the failure of collective security mechanisms to prevent conflict. The League of Nations, established to maintain peace, proved ineffective as countries pursued their own interests. The Spanish Civil War thus highlighted the weaknesses in international diplomacy and the ominous signs of the global conflict that was to come. Additionally, the war attracted international volunteers who formed the international brigades, fighting for the Republican cause. These volunteers came from all over the world, driven by a sense of solidarity and a desire to combat the rise of fascism. Their involvement underscored the global significance of the conflict and the widespread fear of fascist expansion. The aftermath of the Spanish Civil War left Spain devastated, with a society deeply divided and a country in ruins. The conflict displaced hundreds of thousands of people, creating a refugee crisis that added to the growing tensions in Europe. The war's end marked the beginning of a long and brutal dictatorship under Franco, which would last until his death in 1975. In many ways, the Spanish Civil War was a microcosm of the larger global conflict that was to come. It was a brutal rehearsal for World War II, showcasing the devastating impact of modern warfare and the deep ideological divides that would shape the mid-20th century. The lessons learned and the scars left by this conflict would resonate throughout the world for decades to come. Section 7. Germany's aggression escalates, annexations and ultimatums. Emboldened by his successes in Austria and Czechoslovakia, Hitler turned his attention to Poland. In March 1939, Germany occupied the remaining territories of Czechoslovakia, violating the Munich Agreement and raising alarm bells across Europe. Germany's aggressive, expansionist policies alarmed its neighbours and the world. Hitler demanded that Poland cede the free city of Danzig to Germany and grant extraterritorial rights for German citizens in the Polish corridor. Poland, backed by security guarantees from Britain and France, refused to comply with Hitler's demands. Tensions reached a fever pitch as Europe braced for war. Section 8. Invasion of Poland. The spark ignites. On September 1, 1939, German forces invaded Poland, marking the beginning of World War II. The invasion, characterized by its speed and brutality, employed the blitzkrieg tactic, a combination of tanks, aircraft and infantry designed to overwhelm the enemy quickly. German forces employed blitzkrieg tactics to quickly overwhelm Polish defences. The Polish army, though courageous, was ill-equipped to withstand the German onslaught. Within weeks, Poland was overrun, its major cities in ruins. The world watched in horror as the spectre of another global conflict descended upon Europe. Section 9. Declarations of War. The World at War. This chapter delves into the pivotal moments that led to the outbreak of the most devastating conflict in human history. On September 3, 1939, Britain and France, honouring their commitments to Poland, declared war on Germany. This marked the beginning of a global conflict that would last for 6 long years, reshaping the world in ways that are still felt today. The British Empire, including Canada, Australia, New Zealand and India, soon followed suit. These nations, bound by their allegiance to the Crown, mobilized their forces and resources to support the war effort, demonstrating the far-reaching impact of colonial ties and the global nature of the conflict. World War II, the deadliest conflict in human history, had begun. It would involve more than 100 million people from over 30 countries, leading to unprecedented levels of destruction and loss of life. The war's battles, fought on land, sea and air, would test the limits of human endurance and ingenuity. Britain and France declared war on Germany after its invasion of Poland. The swift and brutal attack on Poland by German forces, utilizing the Blitzkrieg strategy, shocked the world and demonstrated the terrifying new tactics of modern warfare. The world watched in disbelief as Europe, still recovering from the wounds of World War I, plunged once again into the abyss of war. The memories of the Great War were still fresh, and the prospect of another large-scale conflict filled many with dread and uncertainty. The conflict would engulf nations across the globe, from the battlefields of Europe to the jungles of Southeast Asia and the islands of the Pacific, leaving an indelible mark on the 20th century. The war's reach extended to every corner of the world, affecting not just the soldiers on the front lines, but also the civilians who endured bombings, occupations, and the upheaval of their daily lives. The legacy of World War II is a testament to the resilience and determination of those who lived through it, and a sobering reminder of the costs of global conflict.